The Untouchables. Who were they and why they became untouchables? By Babasaheb Ambedkar. Part 3, Chapter 8, Occupational Origin of Untouchability. We may now turn to the occupational theory of the origin of untouchability. According to Mr. Rice, the origin of untouchability is to be found in the unclean and filthy occupations of the untouchables. The theory is a very plausible one, but there are certain difficulties in the way of the theory, and it's being accepted as a true explanation of the origin of untouchability. The filthy and unclean occupations which the untouchables perform are common to all human societies. In every human society, there are people who perform these occupations. Why were such people not treated as untouchables were in other parts of the world? The second question is, did the Dravidians have a nausea against such callings or against peoples engaged in them? On this point, there is no evidence. But we have evidence about the Aryans. That evidence shows that the Aryans were like other people and their notions of purity and impurity did not fundamentally differ from those of other ancient people. One has only to consider the following text from Narada Smriti to show that the Aryans did not at all mind engaging themselves in filthy occupations. In chapter 5, Narada is dealing with the subject matter of breach of contract of service. In this chapter, there occur the following verses. 1. The sages have distinguished 5 sorts of attendants according to law. Among these are 4 sorts of laborers. The slaves are the 5th category, of which there are 15 species. 2. A student, an apprentice, a hired servant, and fourthly, an official. 3. The sages have declared that the state of dependence is common to all these, but their respective position and income depends on their particular caste and occupations. 4. Know that there are 2 sorts of occupations, pure work and impure work. Impure work is that which is done by slaves. Pure work is that which is done by laborers. 5. Sweeping the gateway, the privy, the road, and the place for rubbish, shampooing the secret parts of the body, gathering and putting away the leaving of food, odor, and urine. 6. And lastly, rubbing the master's limbs when desired, this should be regarded as impure work. All other work besides this is pure. 25. Thus have the 4 classes of servants doing pure work been enumerated. All the others who do dirty work are slaves, of whom there are 15 kinds. It is clear that impure work was done by the slaves and that the impure work includes scavenging. The question that arises is, who were these slaves? Were they Aryans or non-Aryans? That slavery existed among the Aryans admits of no doubt. An Aryan could be a slave of an Aryan. No matter to what Varna an Aryan belonged, he could be a slave. A Kshatriya could be a slave. So could a Vaishya. Even a Brahmin was not immune from the law of slavery. It is when Chaturvarna came to be recognized as a law of the land that a change was made in the system of slavery. What this change was can be seen from the following extract from the Narada Smriti. 39. In the inverse order of the 4 castes, slavery is not ordained except where a man violated the duties peculiar to his caste. Slavery in that respect is analogous to the condition of a wife. Yajnavalkya also says that 183.2 slavery is in the descending order of the Varnas and not in the ascending order. This is explained by Vijnaneshwara in his Mitakashara, a commentary on Yajnavalkya Smriti in the following terms. Of the Varna such as the Brahmin and the rest, a state of slavery shall exist in the descending order, Anulomena. Thus, of a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, and the rest may become a slave. Of a Kshatriya, the Vaishya and the Shudra, and of a Vaishya, a Shudra. This state of slavery shall operate in the descending order. The change was a mere reorganization of slavery and the basis of the principles of graded inequality, which is the soul of Chaturvarna. To put it in a concrete form, the new law declared that a Brahmin could have a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra as his slave. A Kshatriya could have Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra as his slave, a Vaishya could have Vaishya and Shudra as a slave, and a Shudra could only have a Shudra as a slave. With all this, the law of slavery remained, and all Aryans, whether they were Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, if they became slaves, were subject to it. Having regard to the duties prescribed for the slaves, this change in the law of slavery does not matter at all. It still means that a Brahmin, if he was a slave, a Kshatriya, if he was a slave, a Vaishya, if he was a slave, did the work of a scavenger. Only a Brahmin would not do scavenging in the house of a Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, but he would do scavenging in the house of a Brahmin. Similarly, a Kshatriya would do scavenging in the house of a Brahmin and the Kshatriya. Only he would not do in the house of a Vaishya or a Shudra, and a Vaishya would do scavenging in the house of a Brahmin, Kshatriya, and Vaishya. Only he would not do in the house of a Shudra. It is therefore obvious that the Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, who are admittedly the Aryans, did the work of scavengers, which is the filthiest of filthy occupations. If scavenging was not loathsome to an Aryan, how could it be said that engaging in filthy occupations was the cause of untouchability? The theory of filthy occupation as an example of untouchability is therefore not tenable. The end.